fans of a Horus heresy, the word mystery, and considering all the possibilities before us. Thank you very much for joining me and a guest again for a second episode of Legion of Cheese, following on from the first episode that we published a couple of weeks ago, where Jay from Legion of Two joined us and we had that interesting discussion on the new Mark III Iron Armour Space Marine models. Jay is joining us again for another episode. Hello, Jay.
How you doing, Leaky? You all right?
I am hot. It's a bit warm, isn't it, at the moment?
Yes. On date of recording, it's currently the 9th of the 9th, and it is hot.
Yes, I feel a bit like Hurtado Bronzy is out on patrol in the Nerthine Desert. I'm hot and I'm sweaty and definitely in need of some R&R. But yes, it is warm, isn't it? But aside from that, I'm good. Yeah, and how are you?
Yeah, I'm doing all good. A bit like you said, it's warm. I feel like I need a Fremen still suit. You know, it is so warm. I'm losing so much of my body's water. The Fremen would be in tears if they saw what I look like right now.
Oh gosh, crying in Fremen culture is a very.
Oh yes, they don't like to do it because obviously that's shedding your body's water. That is a big deal. Well, I'm already doing it, so they must think I'm the other version of the Kwisatz Haderach, you know?
They're slapping you in a death still in no time. Yeah, and thank you all for the positive comments and feedback on the first episode of Legion of Cheese. We were sort of so pleased with that, and also because we've got so many ideas, we thought, well, let's do this again, explore another topic, and, I think we're kind of the mindset of developing this into an ongoing series, aren't we, Jay?
Oh yeah, definitely. It was good to see the amount of positive comments that the first episode did receive. And as you say, we even as we were recording the first one, we did have a couple of ideas of what could come next. So the idea of turning it into a series of long form chats, I think, is quite nice. I think people enjoy them. So, well, I hope they enjoy them, but we'll see what they say.
Yeah, well, I always like to hope that people enjoy videos on the channel, but today's topic, I suppose I should get into a bit now, we just had a little preamble there about Legion of Cheese and what we're going to do. But yeah, to return back to my introduction, mystery, the mystery army. So what does this mean? Now, I need to set the scene, so if you will tolerate me waitering on for a couple of moments, Jay, I'll just do that for the viewers. So the year is 2023. This is going to be like a story, isn't it? Like, you can tell I'm thinking, because of the heat, I'm thinking like June thoughts. It's like, it is the year 11901, and I am the daughter of the Padishah Emperor Shaddam IV. Well, obviously I'm not, but anyway. So yeah, it's the year 2023, and earlier this year in May, Games Workshop held its annual gaming festival, Warhammer Fest, for the first time since the pandemic, which was fantastic. Little hiccups in terms of the execution, but, let's hope they will return to form as time goes on. But over the Warhammer Fest weekend, there was a Heresy Reveal event. And at the Heresy Reveal event, we got a Horus Heresy roadmap for the year 2023-24. So it's kind of like a bit of a financial year thing. And it set out what is going to be released over the course of a year. And some of it was specific, some of it was ambiguous. And this is on screen now. And within that, it says Mystery Army. Was it winter, Jay, that it was a Mystery Army in plastic?
It is, yeah. Yeah, it's coming in correlation with the Plastic Mark VI Assault Squad, which was also shown off, but only in the 3D render at the same event. So that was the event where they showed off the roadmap, the picture of the Mark IIIs, which ended up, as we said in the last episode, becoming the cover of the battle group, and the Assault Squad. And, we saw the 3D render of them. And yeah, it was the Mystery Army was teased for winter.
It was, yes. And the Assault Squad, I'm going to go on a little tangent here, but I can't wait for that Assault Squad. Firstly, because plastic Assault Marines are ace. Secondly, because the idea of beakies flying and then being able to nose peck their opponents, that, Assault Marines, because they have Hammer of Wrath, don't they, when they're on the charge. And for me, for the beakies, it's going to be the peck.
You don't think they land with the boot, you think they stick the head into them?
Yeah, straight nose, beak first, Straight in, yeah. I mean, other marks of armour have probably got other more effective methods of doing Hammer of Wrath, but for the Beakies, that's my headcanon anyway. But within that, then, you made a very interesting observation about the Mystery Army. So, do you want to sort of set what you posited about that statement, which is why we're making this episode?
Yeah. So when we were having one of our chats before we had sort of heard rumors and rumblings, I had taken the idea that it was a mystery army almost quite literally, and thought that, let's imagine they're not going to do any army that currently has one of the new form black books.
Hmm.
So it has to be someone completely different.
Mm-hmm.
And we came up with a couple of ideas. And then once we had looked at those, we said, okay, well, if it is going to be someone that's from a black book, who could benefit from plastic? Because specifically, the roadmap said that this was a mystery army release in the plastic section, not in the resin section.
Mm-hmm.
So that
Yep.
sort of led to the idea that, okay, a few of these armies we've written down may have pre-existing plastics, could be doing with some new plastics. So it was like, okay, let's have a look at it then. And we
Mm-hmm.
sat and thought about roughly 6 to 8 ideas of either armies that don't exist
Mm-hmm.
or did exist in 1.0,
Mm-hmm.
or already have a 2.0 black book and maybe could really do with a revamp already.
Yeah.
But I'm going for the idea that originally it was nobody that could be in those books because they'd already been done. And I had thought to myself, Workshop aren't going to release a new black book for an army that they literally just released a year ago or
Mm-hmm.
less than a year ago. I didn't think they would turn it into potentially the Ideneth, where they got 3 books in like 18 months
Mm.
because their army book kept changing.
And that I thought was a brilliant way to look at it, because I know what I did when I saw that. I looked at that and sort of did the whole, let's think about this. And then Bing came up with a couple of what I imagine to be the most likely candidates. But I like your take better, because you're sort of saying, well, what if it really is a mystery army as opposed to being mystery inverted commas army? And
Yeah.
And I think that leads us into a really interesting discussion around what they could do with this slot. Yeah, and that's what we're going to do, aren't we? We're going to spend a few minutes talking about each of these ideas we've had. And I think for each one, we're going to sort of like touch on what models exist at the moment. Well, firstly, what the army is, or the faction is, what exists at the moment, what we think they could use if that was made as a plastic army. And that's the idea of today, isn't it? We're going to go through these ideas and just cover off these points for each one.
Yep.
Today's discussion, it's a bit of a thought experiment, isn't it? It's a bit of speculation, but it's also a bit of fun as well to think about all the factions that exist within the Heresy. We're only going to get one of these this winter, but it is nice to think about what the options and the opportunities are, isn't it?
Definitely.
Cool.
It'll be interesting to see because some of them could really be doing with it. Some of them might already have it. Some of them could desperately need it. So we'll see.
And I think there's probably nothing that's a revelation here to anyone who knows Heresy well. But I think the idea of giving each genuine thought as to what would work and how practical that could be as a new plastic army, I think that that's a conversation probably I've not seen yet. So hopefully we're bringing something a bit new to the table as well.
Yeah.
So would you like to kick off with the first idea on the list?
Yep. So the first idea we had thought about was a mystery army totally dedicated to the knightly houses that are not aligned with the Mechanicum.
Mm-hmm.
So, as we know, they did get a bit of loving in one of the black books that came out. I think it was the Forces of the Omnissiah. But you could almost say that technically the knights that are in that book should really be the ones of the houses that are aligned to the Mechanicum. Whereas there is a complete sister faction of the knightly houses that are pure proper houses, just like it is in 40k. When, well, sort of in 9th ed, 10th ed, still they obviously need their rules, but when it was in 9th ed, there was 2 different versions of the Mechanica or the knightly households. There was the knightly households that were tied to the Mechanicum, like Revan and sort of those old kind of ones. Anybody that basically was in red and white was aligned to Mars.
Yeah. House Tyrannus, of course. We've got to say House Tyrannus, haven't we? Because that's a very popular knightly house.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Whereas on the flip side of that coin, you had House Terran. House Terran are not aligned to the Mechanicum. They're a proper knightly house that maintain the concept of the knights and the squires and the armigers, and they are, technically a separate faction, but they were in the same book. So the idea was that they would get their own sub book that would be completely different from the knightly houses that follow the Mechanicum. They would get maybe some alternate special rules and sort of small flares that make them unique and not just a literal knight painted a different color. A bit like the legions, shall we say, all the legions need a little bit of flair, or what's the difference between a word bearer and an ultramarine? Literally color. Unless you give them the flair, it's just the color.
Exactly, yeah. And that's one of the things the legions do very well, isn't it? They're tremendously characterful. So while you've got armies that are essentially the same, with subtle differences, but in terms of their character, they're radically different from one another. Some are, similarities on some, but some are just, Night Lords, Ultramarines are at two ends of the same character creation, noble, nasty, slider. Yeah. And also with this idea of knightly houses as a heresy army list, it's also saying houses when they are also not fighting alongside Titan Legios as well.
Yeah.
So while a lot of, I don't know the background well enough on knightly houses as a whole, but a lot of knightly houses have an allegiance or at least a support role to a particular Titan Legio, and they will send certain knights off to support Titan Legio. So I'm just sat in front of my Warlord Titan, which is Legio Gryphonicus, and that has a number of knightly houses that support it. So there's well-known knightly houses like House Veroni, who lend a lot of their knights to Gryphonicus. But then there's also some lesser well-known ones, such as House Mamaragon, who also are affiliated to Gryphonicus and lend their knights. But there's another side to that, isn't there? That those knightly houses don't always fight in support of the Legios, and probably you could argue most of them they didn't, and they were actually part of a planet's defensive force, weren't they? A military.
Yeah. That's obviously that was the way it was pre-unification. Their whole function was that the worlds they controlled were their fiefdoms. So they treated it like the medieval knights of old, where, this was ours, we protect it, and that's it. And then, obviously, when the Emperor and the Great Crusade arrived, they sort of got either amalgamated into one of two things. As you say, they got either supporting the Knights and the Titans and the Mechanicum, or they still fought for the Imperium, but they maintained an aspect of autonomy where the world was still their fief, but they would give a due, shall we say, they give, troops, men, and material.
Yeah, like a tithe.
Yeah.
Like the imperial tithe in their military material. Yeah. So what this army would be, it will be that idea of a knightly house, not fighting with the Mechanicum, not fighting with a Titan Legio. They are on their own. So they'll have knights, but they will also have, I just forget the correct name, but like their levy troops. So
sacristans.
This is why Jay comes on to this show, because you know the background better than I do.
Yes. While the list would predominantly be the knights, because obviously with what I would say a ratio of maybe 60-40 now, definitely it's more plastic than resin, because we have the generic knight that came out when the Book of Vengeful Spirit came out. We've got the armigers, which are broke down into two different concepts. We've got the heavier sort of generic knight, and now we've got its bigger brother, shall we say, the big lanky one.
Yeah. This is where I can jump in with my Titan knowledge, the Cerastus Lancer. But
yes.
Shall now be known on Legionist Cheese as the lanky one.
So one thing that they could add, which is from the books, is sacristans. They're basically the human auxiliary to the knightly houses. They're mentioned the odd time as providing support. Now, people generically could say that means, okay, they're there to facilitate repairs. But that's not to stop them turning them into an actual unit with guns. If we take them if we turn the knightly houses into Bretonia, then an armiger is a knight a knight errant. A sacristan is the man at arms. You get 40 of them together, you give them pikes, and that's it. You know what I mean? So it would give a rather elite army and a low model count army the chance to have small human-sized units that could potentially cause a bit of mischief.
Yeah.
Because I think one of the first times I'd heard about them was they were prevalent in the book Vengeful Spirit, because it was referenced that when House Divine was turning to Slaanesh, that they started attacking the Titan that was there. I think it was an Imperator, wasn't it? If I remember correctly, it wasn't a War Master. I think it was an Imperator.
It was, yes, yeah.
And when the Titans started getting attacked, they were like, obviously, what's going on? What's going on? Somebody check the Vox. And they started hearing transmissions that people inside the Titan were essentially fighting against them. And then someone said, it's all the levies and the sacristans that we got from Divine.
Yeah.
So it was almost like, obviously, traitors inside the tank. They were obviously just corrupted by either the Vox transmission or maybe some sort of essence from their overlord that said, we're now doing this, do as you're told. But that was sort of the first time we'd mentioned them. So you could have a lot of working sort of fancy or like sort of interesting things you could do with the sacristans rather than make them just a cheap 10, 20 man shooty unit with las guns. You could maybe try and make them a bit more elite, a bit veteran. You could have potentially a unit that could attempt to repair your tank or repair your knight, like a tech marine. You could have a unit that could infiltrate or could disrupt enemy mechanicum vehicles. There's a few small, that you can maybe justify in lore that they could do, and obviously, if they can work it like that, then
they could. It's I mean, I suppose conceptually, it's similar to the rules for the Titan Guard, which actually do have models, don't they? But it's the idea of the supporting troops, these supersized war walkers, but it not having to always be the mechanicum. It could almost be a bit like some of the concepts from the militia list. So we do have that PDF list, which I think is a rather good one. And for something that's been made available for free, I think that's a really good piece of heresy gaming material and ideas. They could pull quite a lot of the ideas that are already there in the militia list and put that into a knightly house list by combining some of the infantry ideas with the knights. That would work, and as we've touched on, there's quite a lot of models there already, because as well as all the plastic knights that there already are, which are fantastic models, everybody likes knights. They've got the Hellrinds. I mean, even the Mechanicum knights which are forgeable plastic hybrids. They're still, for what they are, they're actually some of the more affordable forgeable models. But in addition to those, we've got the other two Cerastus knights coming, so the Acheron and the Castigator. Those are going to be in plastic soon. So there's some really strong core elements of that army already in plastic. So all they'll need to really add are some plastic infantry units, aren't they? I reckon with a little bit of creative juice,
Games Workshop, they could make a good list out of that. Oh, definitely.
Even without the inclusion of the sacristans, you could just make it pure knights and have all the different variants, because you've got even the sort of generic Imperial Knight that came out, depending on what arm configuration you get it, obviously it makes a different interpretation of the Knight. So there's a lot you could do with that, and with the new Knights, as you say, that are coming out, which are all built off the Cerastus chassis. There's quite a few there to fill. I mean, and considering it's a low model count, one each of those would probably get you near 2K at least.
Yeah, and I mean, but I think adding the human infantry is what would really make it new and original, because we've already got a knight household list in the Mechanicum, Liber Mechanicum. That was the word I was looking for.
Yeah.
So it'll probably be taking that and making it into something new that goes beyond what's in Liber Mechanicum. Yeah, great idea. I mean, I know a few people who have done these armies already in 1.0, in Heresy 1.0, and they'll port them over into 2.0, quite often with 3D printer models for the sacristans. Sacristans, is that right?
Yeah, sacristans. Yeah.
Sacristans, yeah. So there you go. That's idea number one. Knight House. Nighthouse and Sacristans.
Mm-hmm.
So, shall we move on to... Shall I lead into idea number 2? Because this is one of my mastermind specialty subjects, which is demons.
Oh, yeah.
I'm a nice guy, honestly. But yeah, so demons. So this is a path that has already been trodden by the Horus Heresy Games. So back in Heresy 1.0, most of the content, of course, was centered around the Black Book series from Forge World. And in Book 8, Malevolence, we got the Demons of the Runestorm army list, which took some ideas that had been dripped into earlier releases and maybe single models, such as Samus, who's the man beside you, let me add, and Korax Utterblight, and then obviously the Gal Vorbak, the Word Bearers. But in Malevolence, they took that and, with a bit of unholy glue, as you would expect with a demon army list, they tacked it together into a functional army list. It had its issues, but they were able to pull from all the demon ranges that Games Workshop already make in plastic, pull in a few bits of resin. So there's Demon Princes, the fantastic Bloodthirster model they used to do, things like that. Now we've got, what's the name? Oh, thank you, yes. Save me again on the names. Kabander, the Demon General of Cygnus. Yes, an absolutely monstrous model in every regard. And then they did the Demon Brutes, which was the one thing they did release. So there's a lot of raw material there already, both in terms of what they did in Heresy 1.0 and the ideas, and then the models that are there now. So that, I think, yeah, Demons of the Runestorm could well be a mystery army, and it would work. I think this time they'll need to do some work on the armies to make it work better than the last one. The last one, I mean, it was very characterful. It was fun. There was some terrible balance in it, which I think was probably a product of the time and the challenges they had with the writing and playtesting, which I'm not complaining about, but, you know, it was what it was. But I think they could do a much better job of it if they revisited it. There's a couple of things they'll need to add in plastic miniatures. There's a number of demon creatures that could use a plastic miniature in that list. I'll talk about. Yeah. And then I think they'd also want the Runestorm portals, something that you could put on the tabletop to represent that. Because that's a key part of the army, isn't it? This idea that the portals open up and the demons flood out.
Yeah, I mean, even if they don't release a model for that, a lot of people would probably quite enjoy the idea of kit bashing it from the 40k Noctilith crown, which you could work with and turn it into a portal. If I had the opportunity, I would prefer that they would maybe go for more of the actual demons, because when you were looking at the demons, for example, did you enjoy the fact that we had the four patron gods demons on the field, or were you looking for something a bit more unknowable at that point in time? I'll give you an example. I liked the idea of the demons, but I didn't actually like the idea that it was just the same old bloodthirsters, bloodletters, stuff like that. I liked the demon brute because you looked at him and you're like, I can't tell what god you came from, in a way, you know.
Yeah.
And I like the idea of these sort of almost pantheon-esque demons.
Yes.
You know, you can't look at it and go, oh, he's a follower of Nurgle. That's just this creature that's appeared, and you're like, I have no idea what that is or who it's from.
Yeah, agreed.
You know, a bit like Samus, even though Samus is red, and obviously he has you could look at it and go a bit of a cornate tendency, you could almost look at Samus and go, is he a follower of Khorne, though, or is he undivided? You know, that kind of thing. You know, obviously when you look at Commander, you're like, all right, that's a given. But, you know, I did quite like that idea of the... It's almost like, do you remember 5th edition Chaos Codex for 40k?
Oh, vaguely.
There was I think it was 5th. It was either, I think it was 4th or 5th.
I remember that dreadful flying thing when there was no anti-air about.
In that edition, I think it was either it was definitely 5th. Yeah, it was either 5th or 6th, right? That they had basically, in that was the book where they took out all the demons, and all they had was 2 generic stat lines: the lesser demon, and a sort of a greater demon. And the lesser demon's concept was that it doesn't have to be a bloodletter or a plague bearer. You could make the demon out of whatever you want. So, as an example, what I did was I based them off beastmen. Because it's a demon that's been obviously summoned by, say, some chaotic cult, and because they're maybe a pantheon cult, this has been sent through, and it's not one of the gods. It's an amalgamation, or it's something that's unknowable yet. That kind of idea. So I always liked that concept. And I always thought that having just the standard monogod plastics was a bit like, yeah, all right, fair enough. I understand it's all the demons come together, but I wanted more of the brutes.
Yeah, no, agreed. And that was a big part of what interested me about the original Runestorm army list idea, because it had a lot of units that were like the brutes. They only did one of a whole bunch of units that were like brutes, and part of the way that army list was written, there was definitely an element of it to do with, at the time of the heresy, the Chaos Gods had united to defeat the Emperor.
Yeah.
What did the Forces of Chaos call the Emperor? They got a very particular name for him, haven't they?
Oh, it wasn't Anathema?
The Anathema, that's right, yeah. Not the Anathema, the Anathema, yeah. And anyone who's read the story Fear to Tread, as well as reading Book 8 Maelstrom, but Fear to Tread gets into this nicely. There was a allegiance between the Chaos Gods, and they'd set aside their differences to defeat the Anathema, the Emperor. And I thought those brutes were an example of the minions that came forth to do their bidding. So they weren't bloodletters, they weren't steeds of Slanesh, they weren't beasts of Nurgle, it wasn't the Lord of Change. These were demon things that had been created to fight this great war. And they weren't just of the allegiances of the great powers, And of course, there's always a good chance if we do a Demons of the Runestorm list to drop in Malal again, which is just hilarious to have a demon army that is optimized for killing demons. It's just never change writing stuff like that. Games Workshop never change. So demons. Now, what about models though? So I think there's quite a lot of work to do. I mean, there's a lot of plastic stuff available for the 4 great powers, isn't there? There's a nice group of demon princes. Obviously, we've got Kabanda, which is an amazing model. I have a feeling I might end up buying a Kabanda one day. And then we've recently seen Fulgrim Ascended as well. Which will be a nice addition. But they will need more of these generic things like the brutes, and they'll need to be in plastic to make the core infantry, wouldn't they?
Yeah, I would say that at most, because of the way Heresy works, where most of the characters are resin and some of the elite units are resin, I doubt we would see, but it would be nice to see the brutes in plastic. But I would say between 3 and 5 new plastic kit would be nice, and you would need to stagger it with the idea that one of the kits would be rather numerous, smaller, lesser demons, basically foot soldiers, generic disposable foot soldiers, and then each other kit that rises is something bigger and nastier until the final kit is something akin to the Mutilex Vortex Beast from Fantasy, except more Pantheon-esque and a lot nastier. I've just got this idea, this massive mound of meat, this thing with just muscular arms that just walks about, and something that's big and nasty enough that it would go hand to hand and have a fist fight with a dreadnought. If not be slightly bigger, that you would need 1 or 2 dreadnoughts to fight this thing,
They could create some fantastic models around these ideas. Well, with the design talent that Games Workshop and Specialist Games have got, they could create some great stuff here. And the Demon Brutes were, like a little glimpse into that potential. And talking of that, and just touching on this before we wrap up Demons, at Warhammer Fest 2019, if I remember correctly, don't quote me on that, I think it was Warhammer Fest 2019, I remember at the Forge World stand, they had, as well as some models, they had some art concepts, and you just like in a folder, some printouts of 3D renders, a bit like what we've seen with the Mark 6 Assault Marines. And one of the things they had was a winged demon. I think it was a winged demon prince, and it had been done for the Runestorm army. It clearly had the remains of an Astartes in its claws. So some design work has been done, and I have a feeling that Demon Prince is probably just a glimpse into what they've actually done in the totality. So definitely a path less trodden with demons, but a fascinating one. And as we get into the Siege of Terror battles, the demons become more and more important, don't they?
Oh, definitely. I mean, just going back to what I was saying there about the kind of creature I was thinking of, Imagine a Kadai destroyer from the Chaos Dwarves that we saw. They'd done the mock-up for it for the Tamrukan series, but it never got its actual model release. They had done the Kadai Fireborn. Even they could work quite well as demons.
Yeah.
These creatures made of just nothing but fire energy contained in shells of metal.
Yeah.
Sort of. You could even do something like sort of proto-defilers.
Yeah, and they
things
did,
like that. There's a lot you can do with that concept for these creatures, but it's limited by, I suppose, the design team's imagination.
It is, yeah. And recently, thinking about it, they did do that PDF where they released some rules for Forge World demon units that are currently available. So, for example, the Brass Scorpion got some rules for use in the Heresy. So, yeah, we could definitely do it. There's probably more there than we're touching on. So, Demons of the Ruinstorm. That's the second idea. Do you want to lead into the next one? The third idea?
Yeah, so with this one, and I'm not saying it's the hot favorite or anything, or any references to things that may or may not have been shown off on Thursdays or anything like that. But the next one would be basically the Solar Auxilia.
Yeah.
This is one of the ideas that has already got basically a book.
It's got a book.
But needed a lot more loving than what it got. The Black Book was nice as a stopgap, but it really did need more. But this was the one that when we were talking about it, I was trying to originally say that it should have been an outlier because it already had a Black Book. I was trying to, as we said earlier on, I was trying to stick with the idea of trying not to have armies that already have something that's been written.
Yeah.
Because that would quite annoy their fan base. You've got your army, you purchased the book less than a year ago, and within a year, the book is redundant. As I say, I'm trying not to make it the identity thing, but that wouldn't go down well from a PR point of view. So
I think this one leans, as you say, Liber Imperialis includes the Solar Auxilia list. And it does need some errata work, and there's a few units that definitely don't work properly compared to the balance of the rest of the army. But overall, it is a done army list. The issue here is not the issue, the opportunity, or why this could be this would be like the least mysterious mystery. Let's start again. This is the least mysterious mystery army, I think. Yeah. So the problem that Solar Auxilia has as an army, from the point of view of a potential collector, is it's way too expensive. Yeah. And there you go. Leaky Cheese 2023 said it was way too expensive. The fact that everything is resin, bar a couple of plastic hybrids, and you need a lot of infantry, it's a massive barrier to anyone getting into this, apart from the very most well-financed of hobbyists. So this one would be where they say, well, in effect, it's ready to go. All the design work's pretty much done. Let's just convert it into plastic kits and boosh, it's done, yeah. I think this is like the least interesting idea as a concept. That's not to take anything away from the actual Solar Auxilia army and design of it. I think it's brilliant, yeah.
But as you say, it's a bit, if this does turn out to, say, be the hot favorite and the one that does come out, it does lack imagination a wee bit, because I would say between this and the Mechanicum, I personally think people are crying out more for Mechanicum than the Solar Aux. And yet I get the funny feeling that this is going to be the one that they may actually do.
I mean, I get that same funny feeling because of what we've seen over the past few months related to Legions Imperialis, the focus on Legions Imperialis core box game being Solar Auxilia versus Legions. That's a clear hint. We've seen plastic Malcadors, we've seen plastic auxiliary artillery pieces, rapiers, obviously this is plastic microscale. But if it's done at micro scale, a lot of the design work has then been done to increase it up to full scale. So
I'll provide a counterpoint, though.
Right? Now, we do like a good counterpoint.
Yeah, this is the only wrinkle in that whole concept for me, honestly. Right? It's the Arvis lighter. I love that flyer. I've always loved that flyer. There's just something about it. It's great.
It's a little flyer that could. Now, I'm just going to say that I put a tweet up where I put the little flyer that could. when they re-announced it. And then a few days later, I noticed a new Warhammer community article, and it said the little fire that could. I was like, I know where you got that from, you little cheeky so-and-so. So it's like, well, hey, I'm not putting money on my ideas, but it's nice to know when someone's been reading it and thought it was good. But yeah, it's a very characterful little model, isn't it?
Yeah, but they've only re-released it in resin. I mean, from the point of view of the flyer,
there was a lot of teeth gnashing about that, wasn't there?
Yeah, I mean, from the point of view of the flyers, right? The Storm Raven and the Valkyrie are in plastic, and they require a lot more fiddly bits than an Arvis. It wouldn't have been beyond them to put the Arvis in plastic, so I don't understand why it got just basically re-released as resin. It, to me, is the only wrinkle about this being the plastic army, because some people would say, well, if they're just re-releasing that in resin, what's to stop them doing a 2-week made-to-order at Christmas time? Here's all the Solar Rocks back again, including their characters. 2 weeks, fill your boots. And that's it.
But
the Mystery Army is something else.
Yeah, but sorry, Gaff, stop you there, Jay. They're already all available again.
Are they?
They are, yeah. Avas Joven came back into production a couple of months ago.
Oh, okay. Fair enough. Okay, so it's not as big a wrinkle as I thought, but it's still quite annoying, because if it's true that this is getting released, we're going to see a load of lovely tanks. We're probably going to see the new Atheon Heavy Sentinel. But come on, the Atheon Tomato.
Yeah.
But that flyer would have just been like a little cherry on top, because it's literally one of the oldest kits Forge has done, and it has stood the test of time. Everybody loves it. It's just like a running wee thing. So to bring that into plastic, I just thought it would have been quite nice. But they kept it in resin for some reason. It just completely baffled me.
Well, okay, I'm going to give a counterpoint, or I'm going to try unwrinkle the wrinkle.
Already.
So I think to release that in plastic now, it would have basically been a dead giveaway, because they clearly want to keep this secret until they splash it as part of their marketing and release strategy.
Yeah.
If they'd done the Arvis Lighter as a plastic kit now, everyone would have been like, okay, plastic Solar Auxilia, we know it.
Yeah.
So
but
I think
my counter to your counter's counter.
No. I'm still unwrinkling your wrinkle. There's a complex bit of ironing to do here. It's like trying to iron a collar on a shirt. The other thing is, I don't think, as beloved as the Arvis Lighter is, I don't think it fulfills an important enough role in the Solar Auxilia list to sell a lot yet. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So re-releasing it now, they will probably get as good a sales as if they release it after the army's released. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe with time, and if they do release Solar Auxilia with a decent plastic range, maybe then people will start buying them in resin in enough volume to convince the higher-ups in accounting at Games Workshop to sign off on doing it in plastic. But I'm not sure, from a point of view of how the army works, it's an important enough part of the army to really justify a plastic kit yet. There's a lot of things that are, and I speak as an owner of a large model count but small points value Solar Auxilia army. Yes, could you feel the pain between the words there?
Indeed.
There's a lot of things that are higher up the list that the Solar Auxilia needs before it needs the Arvis Lighter. So I'm not so sure. I mean, other things I would say in terms of, it's an obvious one. The design work's done. It's a great looking army. It's interesting conceptually. They're doing it in Legions Imperialis. So that's going to increase interest. So yeah, we'll see. I guess thematically, it's a way to play something other than Space Marines.
Mm-hmm.
And perhaps that is something that has value to what GW can make a successful product out of. But we need to touch a little bit on what models they should do for the Auxilia to make it work. And I've got 3 or 4 that I think are essential.
Okay.
And I'm going to set aside anything tanks-wise, because I think they'll do the tanks. If they do it, they'll do the tanks anyway. But look up Legion list. When someone came along and said, which of the huge list of Legion vehicles do you want making in plastic, the person leading said yes. But I think what's important, though, for the auxiliary is the infantry. And so firstly, they need the las rifle sections in plastic.
Yeah.
Because you need a lot of those troopers, and they're expensive at the moment. Secondly, they need the Velataris, so the elite infantry. That would make a nice squad as well. Beautiful designs. A lot of people like them. And you could do a great multi-part kit or multi-weapon option where you've got the signature Volkite clivers and also add rotor cannons and power axes, which would look cool. And then there's another two, well, probably another three, one of which was your suggestion. But there's a command section, or the tactical command, I just forget its name now. But the command section, so that's a 4-year-old kit at the moment. It's quite expensive. It's like 80 quid. And that's your HQ.
It's only 5 guys, isn't it?
I know, it's pricey. The models are beautiful, and they are produced at a standard more akin to the character series models. So I've got that. And it is a beautiful set, but it's expensive. And the Charonites as well. I think their heavy infantry, they're almost like counter to Terminators in the Legions.
Mm-hmm. That's the Ogrins, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
the name of the Ogrins. Yeah. They were nice models. I am partial to an Ogrin. They are quite a nice kit.
Yeah, they're good. They're quite disturbing as well. Very grimdark. Maximum grimdark points to Edgar Skoromowski for designing those. They're quite terrifying, I think. And then the final one is what you said earlier, the Walker, which I've already forgotten how to pronounce its name.
Aethon?
Thank you. Ethon, that was it, yeah. So, okay, there we go. Solar Auxilia. We've wrinkled and unwrinkled the Solar Auxilia. Right, I'm going to do the next one because I think if I do the one after that, you'll come get me.
Yeah, I think I probably would, yeah.
You'll hunt me down like dog I'll be, yes. So the next idea for the mystery army is Mechanicum and the Skitarii. Notice the pronunciation of Skitarii, not Skitarii. So this is very similar. So the Mechanicum bit, let me deal with first, is very similar to what I've talked about with Solar Auxilia. All the designs are done. It's got its army book. It's a case of saying, let's take all these resin models, which are beautiful, but turn them into plastic so they'll still be beautiful. A lot more people can afford them and build them with happiness intact. So that's a Mechanicum bit, and I think that's pretty straightforward. So much great opportunity there for plastic models. I mean, plastic Castellax, that'd be ace. Absolutely awesome.
They would be nice.
Plastic Myrmidons. And Myrmidon Destructors with all the weapon options. Like, how many Mechanicum players have got Myrmidon Destructors, but they've never given them Darkfire cannons because they never made them? One of the best weapon options in the army. And plastic Thalaxii? Oops, sorry. That would be another fantastic kit because I think those can be used in some other armies as well. It's just a good unit. And all the vehicles as well. The Krios tanks, that'd be fantastic. They'll be grey, and the Triaros, the land trireme, that'd be good as well. So that's Mechanicum, but probably want to talk a bit more about Skitarii because this is almost where Heresy 1.0 got to, but never quite reached. Yeah. And it was getting into the Martian Civil War and the Skitarii and the Dark Mechanicum and the sort of Martian-centric view of that was set out very well in the novel Mechanicum by Graham McNeill. Would recommend it. Yeah, and they've never tapped into that. They've only very lightly touched the edge of it with a couple of character models and also the Titan Guard, so the Pelasts. And I just forget the name of the other ones. Hoplites?
Yeah.
Yeah, Hoplites and Pelasts. So, yes, Skitarii would be a very new thing and getting into that Martian-centric sort of army and force.
Definitely would be cool to see. But I suppose it's a lot of big, apart from a few of the smaller infantry units, it's a lot of nice big kits. So it's whether or not they would... I would say personally that's one of the outliers for me because it would be a lot. I mean, what is it called? The Trios Armored Conveyor? That thing's massive. For them to do that in plastic, it would be a kit,
Yeah, that would be a model probably the size of Kratos in terms of the size of kit, maybe a bit bigger even. It's a big beast. Yeah, the Skitarii would be a very mysterious one to get into, and they've sort of in Liber Mechanicum, they sort of just touched a little bit, prodded the Dark Mechanicum a little bit, just put a little teaser there for the fans of Dark Mechanicum with the persona Schismata or Schismata. We're doing a lot of tomato pronunciations this evening. So Mechanicum, I think, is like Solar Auxilia. It's a very obvious, unmysterious mystery army. Skitarii, yeah, that'd be cool. I'm not really sure what the units would look like for it. I guess there'll be a lot of, Skitarii, so perhaps maybe thinking a bit more about the Adeptus Mechanicus range in 40k and sort of range of units there. Perhaps that might translate backwards into 40k. Into Heresy even.
Yeah. No, I mean the AdMech stuff that they have in 40k. There's a decent amount of units there now. They've got the Dune Crawlers, the Rust Stalkers, they've got those Skitarii assassin-y looking things. They've got the Flyers, the guys with basically like wings. They've got their airborne transport. They've got a tank and a transport tank. So there's a few things they could use just from that pre-existing kit and just add in either an upgrade sprue or maybe a few wee bits and pieces to, heresify them, shall we say? So that people could just use the pre-existing plastics rather than maybe doing a whole range of new plastics that would have let's think about it from the point of view of their seals. If there's, say, 10 people that play Heresy, 6 of them are going to play Space Marines, and maybe 2 play AdMech, and one of them is probably a Space Marine player who wants something else for a bit of variety. Workshop will look at that and go, Heresy is a niche of 40k, and the AdMech are a niche of Heresy, in a way.
Yeah.
Would we want to waste the time making brand new Skitarii units when we could just use the pre-existing Skitarii with a few new bits and pieces?
Yeah.
And maximize the profits instead of worrying about plastics that, may never sell as many as we want to, compared to just adding to the seals of the pre-existing kits.
So that'd be one where maybe a strategic kit or two to put in a characterful unit that, just trying to think what the name is it Skitarii Protectors they call them? Almost like the Marine equivalent infantry.
Yes.
Heavily augmented. I think that'd be the thing I would add, the Do Protector squad. That would work well. But yeah, I think you're right there that there's a lot that they could tap into from the 40k range. And it also dovetails well with the Mechanicum, because I bet they'll probably say, well, the Skitarii might use robots as well, or they certainly might use some of the tanks.
Yeah.
So, okay.
It would be a nice little variation. It may not be worthy of a full black book by itself, but at least a PDF with a couple of kit bash templates would be nice. If we don't get a full range of plastics, just like they've did with the Guard and the Templars in 40k, they do a wee upgrade sprue. Well, it's more like an upgrade box which has 2 sprues in it, and they're more like little bits you glue on or add on, or a separate arm, a separate this for certain kits. Something like that, just for a little bit of variety, would be nice. If they're not going to give people, well, if they're not going to give the Mechanicum players or the Skitarii players what they want, which is everything in plastic right now, then it's better than nothing.
Yeah. So yeah, Mechanicum, an unmysterious mystery army, Skitarii, a more mysterious one.
Definitely an outlier.
Yeah, definitely an outlier. And maybe, it'd be interesting as to when they get into that. It's such a cool idea to explore further. I also feel that quite a lot of the interest also sits within the craziness that they could do with Dark Mechanicum within that. And maybe that might be a product better developed by focusing on the Dark Mechanicum.
Yeah.
Which a lot of people are excited for.
Oh, yeah.
So talking about things that are dark, let's move on to the next mystery army idea. So off you go. I know you've been dying to do this.
Yes, this one is something that's close to home and near and dear to my heart. It's the Black Shields. Now, we know they're coming because they've actually confirmed it in the PDFs, where they basically said in a wee section, the Knights Errant, Garrow, and the Black Shields are coming in future publications.
That was in one of the Legacies documents, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's been in the Legacy documents. Yeah, every time they've updated that and added wee bits, it's still the same opening page. So obviously then there's no sort of grey area about the Black Shields in that regard. Yeah, we know they're coming. The question is when. Now, from the point of view of what we have right now with the concept of the Siege of Chthoniya and the Siege of Terra, the Black Shield concept is really a middle war concept, because they only really came into existence after the heresy broke out, because most of the factions are loyalists who went mad, traitors who stayed loyal, loyalists who turned traitor, or both sides who said bugger that and decided to go out on their own.
So they almost said, we're no longer interested in the fealty to the Emperor or Horus. We are now the League of Independent Astartes.
No gods, no masters,
yes.
only men. But for this one, it's relatively simple. And it's relatively easy to do. I mean, their list only requires 3 variations. If you take 1.0 as the prime example, it only requires 3 variations. They can't have praetors. They must have a Reaver Lord. They can't take tactical squads. Must have marauders. And marauders are basically veterans. That's it. Their basic troop is a veteran, because anybody who's went down that road is a veteran of the heresy and or all the battles that came from that. I was actually going to there for a second say a veteran of the Long War, but it's a different kind of war.
No inductee.
It was one of the reasons why they were so expensive. Actually, it was kind of hateful at times when you would try to run a 5-man marauder squad. Was akin to the points of a 10-man tactical.
It was, they were expensive.
It would sometimes.
I think that would work much better in Age of Darkness, because now veterans are all 2-wound champion type models, aren't they?
Yeah.
The veterans are now useful in Heresy 2.0. And are a force to be reckoned with, and that would lean into the Black Shields well, wouldn't it? Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So given that the veterans are now a force to be reckoned with, and that would make Marauders the same, Black Shields in 1.0, they were characterised by some unique equipment they had. So the Pariah war gear, so the Pariah bolters, power armour, flamers, and then had
the Xeno Deathlocks.
Xeno Deathlocks, like the Krav. Was it the Krav something gun, claw gun or something? Which I thought were wonderful. Alan Bly crazy writing at his very best. Yeah, I enjoyed those. Okay, so you got your idea of Black Shields. Now, this to me sounds like very nearly out ready in terms of the models that are available. Is this more of they need to do an army book for it?
It's a little bit of both. When it comes to the models, from my personal point of view, what I would like to see, and I'll say this hopefully for posterity, is I believe that they should have a Marauder squad in plastic, but purposefully, when they're designing the 10-man squad or the 20-man squad or however big the box set would be, nobody's armor has to be the same mark.
Right.
Purposefully, if you look at a lot of the Black Shield artworks and things you find in Book 6 or some of the earlier concepts, everybody's a ramshackle. I would love to see a plastic kit of a guy with a Mark V torso, a Mark V leg, a Mark VI other leg, a Mark III backpack. You could work it so that each miniature designed has a different set of armor, or maybe 2 or 3 different sets, just to give a bit of variety in there, because as you say, with the generic legions, most of the Black Shield list is already done. You can take the Mark 6s and the Mark 3s we're getting, and you can make the support squads. We'll have the assault squads, we'll have command squads, and you can make them into heavy weapons teams or whatever. But the Black Shields purposefully have a lack of uniformity in that way, because they have begged, borrowed, stole, or killed to get what they have.
Yes.
So they would purposefully have to have very unique suits. So like a guy who has 5 legs, a 4 torso, a 3 head, or a guy who has 2 legs, a 4 torso, or even like I suggested, they're even splitting the legs so that one's a 3, one's a 4, one's a 5, a 6, a 2, a 6. And even some of the arms, like if there's a set holding a bolt gun, it would be a 3 right hand, but a 5 left hand.
So almost conceptually, Black Shield Tactical Squad, we could call it.
Yeah, basically the Marauders. Yeah, just the basic.
That'd be Tactical Squad. You call it a Black Shield Marauder Squad, and the idea will be to get a whole load of different armor mark pieces in there. A bit like perhaps the current 40k Tactical Squad, where you get Marines wearing bits of 4, 6, 7, and 8.
Yeah. Exactly. Just
Similar,
something like that.
similar to that with 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and maybe they could do some intercompatibility with the 3 and 6 kits and use that to make the Marauder squad more unique. So that's like one kit. Would they need to do anything else? Maybe a character or two?
I would say they would probably need the Reaver. The Reaver Lord would have to be something they would do because they always looked very different from the standard Praetor. So I think they'd have to do somebody bereft of insignia. The 2 Praetors we have do have eagles and eyes wherever they are, and you'd have to maybe remove those and have someone who lacks a lot of insignia and has more battle damage.
More battle damage and a bit more wild.
Yeah.
Make them look a bit more like they've gone rogue.
Oh yeah. Lots of things like not capes, but more like maybe the odd cloak or small cape hanging off one shoulder and that type of thing, to sort of show they're hiding it. Lots of bonding studs. I always get the idea that the Black Shields would have a lot of monomolecular bonding studs because they don't have the equipment to fix a lot of the crap that they actually have.
Yeah.
So they're like, just throw a stud on that. It'll do till the next fight.
And probably some grizzly totems as well.
Oh yeah, totems and trophies.
Yeah.
Not to sort of show they're falling to any deity, more like, this was a person I killed because he spoke ill against the emperor, but even I don't like him or something. You know what I mean? There's a lot of things you can do. I mean, one of the characters...
like Endred Haar's unique form of on-the-spot discipline.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, one of the characters I designed for my Black Shields, I think it was, apart from the proof of concept mini, the first one I ever designed was a former world eater who carries around a skull. But the skull he isn't carrying the skull around because he's a world eater. He's carrying it around because it was the person that was sent to either turn him or kill him. So he killed him and keeps his head to remember that,
Yeah. It's a grizzly totem, a bit like Sons of Horus with proclivity for taking the skulls of vanquished foes and I don't know if they plate them in gold or something.
Yeah, they do the sort of, they plate them in gold and then
gold,
the chain.
Yeah, that's all the sort of grimdark accoutrements.
Yeah,
that would really make a Marauder squad.
And I've actually got an idea for a third one. Now this,
I think compared to the other ones we're talking about, 3's quite modest.
Yeah, well, see, because a lot of the kits already exist, they don't need a lot. But I've actually got an idea for one that is from a pre-existing concept, but did not really get brought over to 2.0. A Black Shield Contemptor Cortis.
Oh, yeah.
Because the Black Shields would not have the equipment to maintain the dreadnoughts that they have.
Yeah.
So everything would be a Cortis pattern.
Yeah.
Because they've just thrown the dude in there, strapped it up, used, duct tape and bonding studs and went, here, that will work. We're going to battle. And that's it. And it would be a way to bring the Cortis back into 2.0. Maybe not for everybody, but to make it something very unique.
Yeah.
Because I do miss the Contemptor Cortis pattern idea, almost like the Inducti of Dreadnoughts.
It is, yeah, no, you nailed it. It is the Inducti of Dreadnoughts, and that could be made to work as a kit by doing it as a additional sprue. So like the 2 different versions of a Contemptor.
Yeah,
you get the 2 weapon sets. But you can actually buy the sprue separately.
That's all you would need.
Yeah, so that's a very modest upgrade. Yeah. So I think so. Black Shield is medium mysterious, so it's more mysterious than the Mechanicum, or the Solar Auxilia. But I think it's a low effort one to do. There's not a lot they need to do to make it fly compared to some of the others.
Yeah, no, it would require minimum effort. But it would get another army out. And yes, while some people would say the Black Shields is just more Marines, their whole concept is there's a lot more to them than that.
Yeah.
There's a lot you can work with there.
They're Rebel Marines, and not all of them are either for Horus or the Imperium.
Yeah.
And that idea, it's a bit like the Mechanicum, can be, a bit like Zana, and how they were, certainly as Heresy was kicking off, they were fence-sitting on loyalties, trying to get the best deal. and eventually they sided with Horus. I like that idea. So yeah, Black Shields. Yeah, that's a good one. And I guess that very smoothly transitions into Shattered Legions.
Mm-hmm.
Which, I mean, if Black Shields feels like a low effort one in terms of new kits required, surely this is almost boiled in the bag, ready to go.
Definitely. I mean, from the point of view of kits, we were talking about the Black Shields. We said maybe 3, 4 at a pinch. I mean, one thing we forgot to mention was characters. They would need Endred and the Nemean done in resin. When it comes to the Shattered Legions, all you'd really need is Shadrach in resin and maybe a couple of the others, because all of their kits already exist. You know, when it comes to the Shattered, it's more about the concept of the army, the paint scheme, and the elite units.
Yeah.
In the sense of pre-existing units you already have. There is no elite Shattered Legion Marauder tactical squad. It's more about throwing the Salamanders and the Raven Guard together, throwing in a character and going and having merry hell.
That's literally the concept, isn't it? It's bits of legions that are still functionally recognizable and are choosing to continue to be that legion, clumping together into a hodgepodge of stuff thrown in, which is all sort of glued together by a charismatic leader, i.e. Shadrach Medusa.
Yeah. It reminds me of actually a concept that happened, I suppose it happened in a lot of other things, but it reminds me of the Shattered Legion idea reminds me of D-Day from World War II. When the paratroopers jumped in to Normandy, they got completely scattered to the wind. So if they didn't reach their rally point, and they mentioned this in the movie Saving Private Ryan as an example, what they would do is they'd patch together a mixed unit and just head off to make trouble. That to me is basically the Shattered Legion in a nutshell. You know, what's the mixed unit? The mixed unit is a 10-man unit, and purposefully, if you were painting them, you'd have 3 Salamanders, 2 Raven Guard, and the rest are Iron Hands.
Yeah.
Now, they wouldn't keep their Legion traits. They'd have a Shattered Legion trait so that you could hybridize the concept, and then they could go off to make trouble. You know,
I already know what you call that trait. You'll call it more than the sum of its parts.
Yeah.
I quite like the sound of that.
Yeah.
So it would be a similar idea to how inductee squads are done.
Yeah, that you would lose certain keywords or key options and gain additional or alternate key options. Yeah.
So that would add another flavour, wouldn't it, to the Shattered Legions concept? Because if I remember rightly, from 1.0, Shattered Legions essentially took units from different Legion lists and sort of stuck them together. There were a few unique characters, but there wasn't like a reforged squad, was there? You know, say, made up of a number of Marines from different legions who've been grouped together to become a new tactical squad. Yeah. I like that. That's a good idea. That's another very low effort army to make happen, and it's more about the rules and the background than the models.
If you want to be really precise, most people consider the Shattered Legions to be post Istvan 5, right?
Well, they are, yes.
Yeah. Well, see, I'm actually about to say something, and if you think about it, it's existed since Istvan 3. The Coral City. And Saul Tarvitz, he led, along with Captain Loken and Tarek Torgadon, the remains of the World Eaters, the Emperor's Children, and the Sons of Horus. That's a Shattered Legion. That's an army list you could do, and Saul already has a model, and Captain Loken. Yeah. So you could actually do an Istvan 3 version of the Shattered Legion list, because it's just a hodgepodge of what was left. There was some Death Guard there in lore, but they mentioned that they stuck to themselves and were semi-wiped out when Mortarion landed a bulk lander and decided to kill everything that moved. But you could throw them in as well if you chose. And in the lore, there's quite a few additional characters. You know, there's what's his name? Solomon, captain of the Second Company, Emperor's Children, who was in the book Fulgrim, and because that was written after Galaxy in Flames and he wasn't mentioned, they said like he took a head injury and was unconscious for a whole chunk of it, and then woke up and decided to not steal Saul Tarvitz's thunder. So he just decided to maintain a little area and hold the line, and then Lucius killed him.
Yeah.
You know, you've got Captain Erland of the World Eaters, who was a loyalist. You've got Macer Varen,
Yeah.
Although he was technically in orbit, but you could argue that he was there. And, what's the other guy? Shabran Dar, the World Eater character from Book 1.
Oh, yeah.
He was an Imperial. So there's quite a few there you could do. You don't have to stick to the idea that the Shattered Legions are Istvan 5 or,
well, post Istvan 5, because...
Yeah, essentially post Istvan 5, ramshackle hodgepodges. You can go as far back as you need to justify that, and that, to me, that always sounds like a brilliant concept for an army. The sort of... I used to call them the loyal traitors.
Well, yes, and actually you've touched on something that I was just going to bring up as well, about the flexibility of the concept of the Shattered Legions, because... So you remember Black Book 3, Extermination? So the main narrative event, or the kick-off narrative event of that book, is a battle at Paramar 5.
Yeah.
And that posits a very interesting situation, doesn't it, where the Alpha Legion are tasked to take the world, and just as they are enacting their attack, a bunch of Iron Warriors, led by... What's his name? What is the name of the Iron Warrior?
Now you've put me on the spot, and it's actually escaped my head.
The very gnarly guy, as tough as nails, though. Now, through the magic of the internet and pausing, we have found out the name of the character. It is Keir Varlin.
Yep.
And he was leading this Iron Warriors force, and they are loyal to the Imperium. And they end up fighting along with the Mechanicum defenders of the city of Paramar against the Alpha Legion attack. But when you understand that concept, that's a great thought idea about how some Shattered Legion battles could happen. It might not just be survivors. It might be garrisons and expedition fleets who were completely separated off from the sort of core events of Istvan and the Wordbearers subterfuge, probably Alpharis and Omegon subterfuge, but come together as completely functional Legion units, but are forced together in circumstance. So Shattered Legions, another boil in the bag, ready to go one.
Yeah, a bit like the militia. I mean, even a PDF would be a nice wee start to get it up and running, but they must be saving it a bit like the Black Shields for an actual Black Book. Or, worst case scenario, they're going to turn those concepts into the Exemplar battles, because you always get a special unit.
Yeah, true.
I would hope they would deserve a bit more treatment.
I think Mystery Army, if it is Black Shields, I would probably imagine they would package Black Shields and Shattered Legions into one. But,
definitely. Just like they did in Book 6.
So again, that's medium mystery, but low effort to make it happen, because most of the models are done. Or certainly, there's functional plastic units out there. So a few moments ago, you mentioned Militia, and Militia was the last one on the list that we wrote. I've added another one after this, which is kind of like a dishonourable mention. Yes, Militia. So the Militia are one of those really interesting parts of the Heresy gaming universe. Yeah. So the original list came in Book 5 Tempest, and it was like this. They wrote the list so you could make an army out of all sorts of different models. Very creative, and you could do anything from very, very technological forces, almost sort of a starters level with Land Raiders and Rhinos, essentially mirroring what was the name of that faction that Horus was attacking in Galaxy in Flames at the start? I think it was Galaxy, or was it Fall?
Oh, the Interax.
No, not the Interax. No, that was in You're Warm. It wasn't the Interax. It wasn't the Diasporax. It was the third faction they fought. This was after Horus had been corrupted.
Oh, the only one I can think of. I can't remember their name, but one of their units was the War Singers.
That was the Defenders of Istvan 3.
Yeah.
So that's one for the viewers to put in the comments. We're not going to techno find that one.
No.
So they got the concept of the militia well established. In Age of Darkness, Heresy 2.0, they've done the PDF. So we've got that. And that's a good PDF. They've added some great new options, like, squats are there, along with another thing. So I wonder if, that's definitely a mystery army option. Medium mystery again. Could they do it, though?
I would say it's a bit of an outlier, because even back in 1.0, that was very much the kit bashers, the character designers army, because I can't think off the top of my head of any Forge World units it actually got.
No, it didn't. They made nothing for it. because it was designed to use models they'd already made in the past and stuff that was currently available.
So I get the feeling that if and when they do that, if we get any units, it's going to be very, very good. But apart from that, it's going to be, it gets the black book treatment. Now use your imagination. Just take Cadian, Deathcore, outcast guys from Necromunda, cultists, and go nuts.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think if they were to do it, they will probably do it as a human sort of militia, and it would have a bit of variety. But trying to get enough variety into a kit, I think it'd be so difficult. The militia list is great, but it's almost too diverse in terms of concepts to try and make models for. I mean, they could, but they'll be turning out models for the next few years, trying to cover off all the options. And Games Workshop isn't about just rushing out models. They're very methodical with how they market and sell and pace their releases. That's completely dissociated from what the militia would need. So it's definitely a mystery army option, but I think it's unlikely to happen, and it's difficult to realise as well.
Yeah, no, I would wholeheartedly agree. It'd be nice to see it happen eventually. Refine the PDF, get out any wrinkle, put it in a black book, but that's as far as it'll go. Let's face it, it's an army that if someone wants to do it, they're going to do it. And they don't really need just like they did in 1.0, you don't really need any plastics. You'll design it yourself. It's kind of designed in a way to be like that.
And even in plastic, it suffers from an issue of needing an enormous model count. I mean, if you think you need a lot of solar auxiliary, that's nothing compared to what you need militia-wise. In a number of ways you can build armies. So I think it's not a great fit in terms of how they'll develop a product. But the army is a great idea, and I love it. So, yeah. So there you go. Do you want to know what my dishonourable mention is? I mean, it's not because
Dark Mechanicum.
No, Dumb Mechanicum.
No. All right, okay. I honestly thought you were going to say Dark Mechanicum. That's why I was like, okay.
No. I think we covered the Dark Mechanicum off as part of sitting in the same space as Skitaria.
I suppose, yeah. Well, go on then, enlighten me.
This is only dishonourable, not because they are dishonourable, but only because the models haven't been done, and that is the Sisters of Silence. So, yes, the Silent Sisterhood. Now, this is a weird one, because the army list was released in Book 7 Inferno as part of the Custodian, alongside the Custodians making up the Talons of the Emperor army list. Now, when they released that, everyone thought, great, they're going to do these. So we got the plastic models in the Burning of Prospero set. So we got the Custodian squad and the Sisters of Silence base squad. Very nice. Games Workshop then went and ticked all the options on the Custodian list and very focused on that. They did two models, I think, for the Sisters of Silence. One of which is exceptional, which is the Charon pattern Acquisitor, which is a brilliant model and I really, really like. And I'm glad they did it. And then they also did the bolt pistol arms.
Yeah.
And then they lost complete interest in fleshing out the other options. Well, sorry. Fairness and balance, they did do Janita Kroll, a very nice character series model. This might not be so much a mystery army option, but this could be the surprise army option, yeah? And again, they've done all the work, they've made the rules for them, they just need some models.
Yeah, I would say another outlier. Hopefully one day a valid option.
Yeah, I suppose these suffer from being a bit of a tactically odd army. Because essentially the party piece about the Sisters of Silence is they are the ultimate anti-psychic army. Yeah. In a lot of games of Heresy, their abilities are wasted.
Yeah.
Unless you're fighting demons, Thousand Suns, or a particularly psychically attuned bunch of word bearers, you're probably not going to get your value out of a lot of their abilities that you'll pay for in squads.
And even that alone means that, from the point of view of the game itself, G-Dub would look at that and go, it's the niche of the niche of the niche. So is it worth it?
Yeah.
That kind of thing, they're going to look at it and go, we need something that gives us the maximum amount for as little as
maximum amount. So, yeah, absolutely. They're looking to get the best return on any given investment in production and design, aren't they? And perhaps the Sisters of Silence are in a bit of an awkward place in the Heresy because of that, because of what they represent. And it's an interesting contrast to the Adeptus Sororitas in 40k, which it's like another elite human army, isn't it? After the Astartes, they are the best human warriors, large standing forces, aren't they?
Oh yeah, basic second to the Marines,
Yeah.
because they actually have proper power armor, and then below them is stormtroopers. Then below them is the baseline human Katie, or the human
the guard,
shock troops, the
Yeah.
guardsmen, yeah.
Yeah, that's not to say that the Adeptus Sororitas aren't very potent warriors, but they're not freakish, human, biologically engineered creatures in power armor, are they? They are still mortal, functioning humans.
Yeah.
But yeah, they're an elite human force. They've got a very strong theme around their faith to the Emperor. And that's a great foundation for an army theme that's going to be gameable. The Sisters of Silence have got the issue that skill-wise they are comparable to the Sororitas, perhaps a bit better. Warrior-wise, yeah.
Oh yeah.
But their thing is they are anti-psycho troops. And in most games, that's a wasted ability. So yeah, probably it would be a very unusual thing for them to do. But yeah, it does make me wonder though why they wrote the rules in the first place.
Prospero?
And then just sort of, and then they just sort of left it. Maybe they did write the army list and then thought, actually, when you think about it, they're not that useful on the field.
Well, we'll, you never know, there's still a wee bit left of the Siege of Terra. Let's see what the Null Maidens do against demons.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you did a campaign, the war in Webway, then the Sisters of Silence will be in their element because you're fighting the Netherborn every single step of the way. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's our list, isn't it?
That's it. Yep, that's them all. So I would say personally, if I had to rate the top three, that I would say 1 being the one that's most likely and 3 being the least out of the 7 or 8 there we had. I would say probably 1's the Solar Rocks, 2 is the Black Shields, and I'd say honestly 3 is the Knightly Houses. But what about you?
Okay. I would go 1 Solar Auxilia because... So we're doing likelihood here, aren't we? Yeah. So Solar Auxilia, then Mechanicum, then Black Shield stroke Shattered Legions.
Yeah.
That'd be mine.
Oh.
So that's likelihood. What about personal preference? What would you pick out of that to be the mystery army?
It would have to be the Black Shields, purely because I need that book. I don't mind running my army as any legion I choose, but I'm missing the core concept, which is the Marauders, because I'm having to run 10 guys with chain swords, 10 guys with bolt guns, 10 guys with flamers.
Yeah.
In the Marauders, I can have them all together in one unit.
Yeah.
And that's the point, because it's meant to be standardization for a Black Shield doesn't exist. So every dude carries what he wants.
Yeah.
So I need that almost, basically like Space Marine veterans. I need veterans as troops without having to take pride of the Legion.
Right. So Black Shields, yeah, fair enough. And then what would I pick? So I'm almost... I'd almost pick Black Shields just because I know how passionate you are about them. And I'm currently very contented with the armies that I'm working on from the main list. So doing a lot of stuff on my Sons of Horus, still developing my Mechanicum. So I'm quite happy at the moment with what I've got. But if you were to really sort of push me on one personally I'd want, it would be the Skitarii and Dark Mechanicum. And in particular Dark Mechanicum. Because I think it's an element of the heresy that is really interesting. A lot of people know about it, and I think there's some great ideas that could be developed from it. And perhaps, dear viewers, who have been very patient and listening along to our discussions, and I hope you've enjoyed this, do share in comments. What would you pick out of this list? Which do you think is the most likely? Which would you most like? Do you think we missed anything? Because we could have missed something, couldn't we, Jay?
Oh, no, definitely, yeah. I mean, there's a lot of armies in the heresy, a lot of sub-factions that do deserve their own place in the, their own 15 minutes of fame, the place in the sun, whatever you want to call it. So, yeah, there probably is something we've missed, and as you say, if the viewers know it, stick it in a comment.
Yeah, I'm sure we missed something. I'm almost certain of it. Always interesting to hear that, yes. So, I think we've covered a lot of ground there. It'll be interesting to revisit this discussion once the Mystery Army is announced.
Oh, yes, like a wee follow-up episode where are we going to be vindicated, or are we going to be sitting here going, really? The Cabal? They chose the Cabal as the Mystery Army?
I mean, I know you'll be...
You know what? I'm rage quitting this game. I flip a table.
I'll be just like, when can I order John Grammaticus? So I'm a big fan of John Grammaticus. I think he's a very fascinating character. But yeah, the Cabal, that'd be hilarious. And, Slough Dar, everyone wants a Slough Dar model. But yeah, I think we will have to revisit this once the Mystery Army is announced. Yeah?
Definitely.
So?
Oh, yeah.
So any final thoughts, concluding remarks before we wrap up for this episode of Legion of Cheese?
Well, yeah, let's see. It's probably going to be the Solar Auxilia. I would have loved the Black Shields, but any new heresy is good because
yeah, absolutely.
From me being from my personal point of view, there isn't as much heresy releases as I would like. More heresy more often. So if they just released some more stuff, that'd be good. Even if it is, granted, I am a Black Shield player and mostly Marine player, but at least if something's coming out, then we know heresy is not being sidelined per se, if you know what I mean, or just we'll release 2 things a year. That's fine.
Yeah.
They really need at least 4 or a drop every like 2 drops every quarter.
Yeah, keep the heresy heartbeat going. Yeah. What's the phrase? A rising tide lifts all boats in the harbour. And I think when you say more heresy is a good thing, I think that metaphor, or that simile, should I say, is quite appropriate.
Oh yeah.
Fantastic. Well, that was Legion of Cheese episode 2. I hope you've all enjoyed listening to this discussion that I've had today with Jay, and thank you very much, Jay, for coming on for a second episode.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. And yeah, so as you say, viewers, share those thoughts and observations in the comments section. And perhaps if you've got any ideas for future discussion topics that you think we could incorporate into a Legion of Cheese episode, do share those as well. Be very interested to hear.
Definitely.
But other than that, I'd just like to thank you all very much for watching, and we will speak to you again soon.
Bye-bye now.